From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Hi, everyone. It's Paul. My name is Paul Frank. I'm the acting coordinator of the NACO and the SACO programs at the Library of Congress for the PCC Secretariat. And I am here today with an RDA expert, Tim Carlton.
I'm Tim Carlton. I'm in the Library of Congress Cooperative and Instructional Programs Division. And today we're going to have a brief discussion on the RDA and policy statement provisions for capitalization, abbreviations, and numbers.
Yeah, easy to say, very hard to do. These have always been trouble areas for me in RDA, so I'm very happy that Tim's going to walk me through it. So let's start with capitalization, okay? Mm-hmm. What are the instructions on capitalization, and where do I find them in RDA?
Okay, well, good question. Generally, if you think of all three of these things are kind of general rules. They don't relate to any particular RDA element, and so they're going to be in the general rules way up at the beginning of RDA in Chapter 1. Capitalization specifically is in 1.72, and the way that instruction breaks down is that tells you to go to Appendix A. So there isn't much in 1.72 except see elsewhere, which catalogers are always used to cross-references. And in Appendix A, it breaks down into several ways. First, there's just kind of some general rules about capitalization in different parts of the record. And the title, the statement of responsibility, the addition statement, notes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then it talks about what I call different types of words. In other words, the names of persons, the names of geographical terms, soil names, scientific names, patent names, historical terms, et cetera. Different kinds of words, what gets capitalized and what doesn't. And those are generally limited to English, those instructions. And then after that, there's a long list of about 30 different languages, the rules for Bulgarian, the rules for German, the rules for Swedish, et cetera, with such things as kind of general rules, such as in German, all nouns are capitalized. In French, corporate names, only the first word is capitalized. So it helps you understand those.
I'm still stuck on that soil names.
Yeah.
Soil names.
I'm not sure I would know a soil name when I saw it.
All right, well, go check RDA, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But, well, Tim, I looked at the examples in Chapter 1, and I just wanted you to tell me if I'm understanding this correctly. So for the title in the example, A Dictionary of American English on Historical Principles, the initial article A was capitalized, so that's right, because the Appendix S, the first word is always capitalized.
Word of the title, yes.
American was capitalized in English, and that's because those are...
I think proper adjective, if I remember right from my English education.
Okay, everything else was lowercase. I mean, so that's good. That's
well,
according.
English would also be capitalized.
English would be as well. Okay, okay.
The name of a language.
Okay. Now the second one is a German title, and I knew it was German, but I didn't know what it meant, so I looked it up, and it's Sexpartiten für Flöte. Well, the word Flöte means flute, so für Flöte. Flöte is a noun, and that was capitalized, so that's the reason, because German says capitalize all nouns.
Correct.
But the first word, sex, was capitalized, which means six, and that's only because it's the first word of the title. So Appendix A is correct. We're following that. Right. And then partitin, which means also another noun, means partita, was capitalized.
And of course, just partitin and flöte in that case are both. Well, I guess partitin is plural. It doesn't make any difference whether it's singular or plural. Noun in German is capitalized. Okay. German adds letters onto the ends of words if they're plural sometimes, but that doesn't affect the capitalization at the beginning of the word.
Okay, well, I got it.
I don't know why one would think it does, but it doesn't.
Okay, well, I was going really well with those two until I got to the last one. eBay bargain shopping for dummies, where eBay, which is the first word of the title, actually had a lowercase e followed by an uppercase B for bay, eBay. Now, I know that's the way it appears when I search eBay. How does that affect, what does Appendix A say about that?
There's a provision in Appendix A, I think it's A 4.1, that simply says, I love the terminology, it's called follow unusual capitalization. And eBay is one of the examples there, and I think other things like Amazon, which the A is not capitalized because you don't see it capitalized with the capital A. I'm not talking about the river, I'm talking about Amazon.com.
Sure, of course. That's the one that I thought of first, Or iPhone.
Which iPhone is a good example. Of course, there you have a product name, so I'm not sure about that. But again, the rule would be to follow the usage of the term.
The usage of the term. Okay, very good, very good. So I guess that means that I always need to follow Appendix A?
Well, no, not really. It kind of leads you to believe that, except there's a policy statement, 8.1, LCPCC policy statement, that says for capitalization of transcribed elements, which is what we've been talking about so far. Remember I said that Appendix A starts out talking about terms in different parts of the record. Yeah. And in transcribed elements, it says you are encouraged to follow Appendix A, but it is okay to take what you see. And the most common example that is used to illustrate that is something like when you see a title page completely in capital letters. Every letter of every word is capitalized, of both the title and the author statement and the publisher and the city, and well, you can't capitalize a date, but so it would be okay to do that. The policy statement says encouraged but not required to follow Appendix A.
Well, great. So I have seen that in bibliographic records, so that's okay according to RDA.
Yeah. A lot of people think they are just uncomfortable doing it, and so that's fine, then don't do it. It may mean, depending on how you create your authority records, if you're using some type of a generator that automatically reads you 245A, then the 670 in the authority record may end up with all capital letters, right, which isn't necessarily wrong, but some people don't like the way that looks, so they tend not to do that with. That might be one reason why they tend not to do it in the bibliographic record. But it's fine. It's not a problem.
Well, to me, it's always like the record's screaming at me, right?
Well, right. Yeah. Yes. Don't use bold. Don't use all caps.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, what about non-transcribed elements? What are the rules there?
The policy statement there is to follow Appendix A. So you really need to learn Appendix A. I always tell, when I'm teaching beginning catalog, I tell them, don't memorize Appendix A. Memorize the structure of Appendix A so it doesn't take you a long time to look things up. But don't try and guess. A lot of things you will memorize. Proper names are always capitalized. The names of historical periods are capitalized. But some things are, can be problematic. For example, West Virginia, the W in West is capitalized because it's a place, and the V in Virginia. But if somebody is talking about, tales of Western horse rustlers, well, Western what? That isn't really a geographic jurisdiction, and so therefore the W would not necessarily be capitalized. So geographical adjectives are not necessarily capitalized, but actual geographic jurisdictions would be. That's the kind of thing that is brought out in Appendix A, and why you just have to learn the structure and then look it up. Take the time to look it up.
Great. Tim, this is really helpful to me. Thank you very much. Let's talk about abbreviations, another area where I have some difficulties. Where are the basic instructions in RDA on abbreviations? Where do I go to find them?
Well, again, as I mentioned in the beginning, these are going to be in Chapter 1, up with the general rules. Abbreviations specifically are in 1.78. There isn't much there because it immediately tells you go to B4. So again, we have that cataloger's favorite cross-reference kind of situation where you're referred to B4. And B4 then tells you that in transcribed elements, and this is actually easy to remember if you remember it's a transcribed element. The instruction says use only those abbreviations that are on the source. Now, I know a lot of people, when we first started training people in RDA, got confused and they thought no abbreviations in a statement of responsibility, no abbreviations in title, no abbreviations in an addition statement. No, that's not the point. The point is the cataloger does not supply abbreviations. Cataloger types what you see in a transcribed element. That is the essence of a transcribed element. So if, for example, the addition statement reads 2ND, well, that's really an ordinal number, which we're going to talk about later, ED period, that's what you would transcribe. If it says addition spelled out, you transcribe that. If it's ED period, either in one of the many languages that uses ED as an abbreviation, you would transcribe the abbreviation. So the point is not no abbreviations in transcribed elements. The point is that the cataloger does not supply abbreviations.
Okay, well, that's helpful. I'm learning a little bit more about transcribed versus non-transcribed, but maybe what do we do with abbreviations in those non-transcribed areas of the record?
With the policy statement, again, says, and it's one of my favorite words through the policy statements, is generally, which is generally do not abbreviate non-transcribed elements. So follow the terms that appear there. There are very few exceptions that are covered in further down in Appendix B, I think it's B5 to B9, where there specifies certain situations that are abbreviated. And these would be things that are such as IN for inches in the size of a sound recording. I think MIN period for minutes of a duration of the playing time of a video or audio product. But those are specifically called for, and again, those are not transcribed areas anyway. So you could see that you might quite likely to abbreviate in that case. So the key thing here is we are 300A subfield pages. One of the big changes in AACR2, and I know you'll be getting into this in another video, is that pages is not spelled out. 300P is what we would have done in AACR2. We do 300 pages now. And so when you have 5 3/4 inches for one of those old floppy diskettes, I guess it was 5 1/4, it would not be INCHES, it would be IN period, and that's because RDA specifically says to, actually it's a policy statement, says to specifically says to do that. But there are very few of those exceptions. It's generally do not abbreviate non-transcribed elements.
Okay, well, very good. That's good to know. I had a question about, as an authorities cataloger, I was curious about abbreviations that we sometimes see in access points, and I wanted to review the instructions on those because to see how it goes along with what Tim's telling me about abbreviations. And since an access point in a bibliographic record uses a controlled form of the name, and NACO catalogers, authorities catalogers follow the principle of usage of a name, often there will be an abbreviation used in a title, say with a person, or in the place name that's added to an existing, added to a preferred name for a corporate body, for example. And so we follow the principle of representation in a sense with authority work. So a title would be abbreviated if it appears that way. But the addition of a place name actually would refer back to Appendix B because we're using abbreviations there that are used for place names as prescribed in as abbreviations in Appendix B. So in an access point in a bibliographic record, you may see abbreviations used, but that's because of the nature of the controlled form of the access point.
Right, exactly.
Itself.
And that's the key point. I'm glad you covered that because authority records is your baby more than mine.
Yeah, we had to turn the tables at some point, right?
Exactly.
Okay, now the big question, and it will never go away because I still don't quite have a grasp on this. What about CM? Sometimes I see CM with a period, sometimes without a period.
At the end of the 300.
Is one right and one wrong? Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
What's going on?
Well, the point here is to understand that CM is technically not an abbreviation. It is a symbol. And so symbols do not automatically get followed by periods. They just don't. Abbreviations are followed by periods. So the provision is that CM is followed by a period if it is followed in the record by a series statement. That goes back to ISBD punctuation, which actually is worded in such a way that the field preceding the series statement is preceded by a period space. And so the period at the end of CM when we supply it is there because it says, here comes a series statement, not because it's following an abbreviation, because it is not following an abbreviation. It's a symbol. So very simple. If you have a 4XX in the record, CM should be followed by a period. If you don't have a 4XX in the record, the CM should not be followed by a period. Pretty simple rule of thumb.
It makes sense. And
It kind of, I mean, only some people could distinguish
I'll
between a
still-
symbol and abbreviation.
Yeah, I think
but
I'll still
it was
question
news to me
my-
as well. Yeah,
Right,
it was
right.
news to me as well.
Well, that was very helpful.
Good.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, now, numbers and numerals, and that's the last part of our discussion. And as you can see, I've always had problems distinguishing between numbers and numerals. I'm not going to ask you to help me with that, but I think that sort of shows that I need some help here. So where do I go in RDA to find information on numbers?
Okay, well, again, this is going to be up in Chapter 1 with the general instructions, whereas capitalization abbreviations were in 1.7, subrules of 1.7. Numbers are addressed in 1.8. And let me just try to clarify the confusion. Numbers is kind of a generic term, and then you have types of numbers. One type of number is a numeral, which is what we mean by digits. What we use Western-style Arabic numerals for the most part. Those are numerals. That's one type of number. But another type of number is a number that is spelled out as words. F-I-F-T-Y, F-I-V-E for 55, rather than the speed limit signs 55. Things. I think speed limits are still 55. And so the rules break down that way as well. Numbers expressed as words or numbers expressed as numerals. And so numerals are recorded as they appear. Now, again, in both cases, if it's in a transcribed area, it's transcribed as it appears.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah,
So
right,
if I have
exactly.
a title,
Right.
5-5, using the Arabic numeral, is that correct? Numeral?
Correct.
5-5 places, favorite places to camp. That's the way the resource presents itself. The title's a transcribed element. I'll use the 5-5.
Exactly. Right.
Okay, okay. But what about an area where I would maybe not follow what I see in the resource? Are there any, like, say, a non-transcribed
Right,
area?
there
What
is.
do I
And
do?
actually, earlier in 1.8, there is a list of the areas to which the transcribed elements apply. And one of those to which the transcription does not apply is the date of publication,
Okay,
what
that's
we
a
know as the
hard area.
264C.
Okay.
And there, it's not a date of transcription, it is a date of recording. If you read the instructions, it actually says record the date of publication. It doesn't say transcribe the date of publication. Theoretically, the date of publication could be TWOTHOUSAND, whatever. Or it could be the digits 2015. Both are numbers, but you do not transcribe that, you record that. And so it breaks down into how you record it. The numeral, if it's recorded in a numeral, you transcribe the kind of numeral that you see. And then what kind of numerals could we have? Well, Western style Arabic numerals or Roman numerals are the two most common. And so if you have a Roman numeral publication date, MMXV would be this year, I think, you would record that. Because it is a numeral and the instruction says numerals in the date of publication should be recorded as they appear. Now that gets a little confusing, and I have to say there seems to be a conflict in the instruction because the instruction for recording the date of publication actually has an example that has a Roman numeral publication date, and it shows, it appears to show that you would convert that to Arabic numbers, 2015. That is not necessarily true because of the policy statement.
Oh, I was going to ask you,
Right,
are there any
right,
policy
policy
statements that go
exactly,
along with
right,
this to
right,
clarify?
right.
Okay.
Now, so that's the case on numerals recorded as it appears in here again. We're talking about the date of publication. For words, on the other hand, the instruction says to substitute numerals for numbers spelled out as words. So if it does appear TWOTHOUSAND, blah, 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 you would record that with Western style Arabic numerals. It sounds complicated, but it's a straightforward situation. If you have a transcribed area, record what you see. That's a no-brainer. That goes without saying. If it's a non-transcribed area, and again, here the date of publication is the most common example, or dates and notes perhaps, numerals should be recorded as they appear, and words, numbers expressed as words should be converted to numerals.
Okay, now let me see if I got this.
Okay.
A transcribed title, 55 things you need to know about RDA, spelled out, F-I-F-T-Y, 5. I will transcribe that exactly as it appears.
Correct.
Transcribed area, title.
Right, exactly.
Okay. What about a series statement where I have volume spelled out, and let's say volume 6,
Okay.
S-I-X. I keep volume, but I can substitute the numeral 6 for that 6, or do I have to substitute the numeral 6 there?
Correct. You would keep the volume spelled out, what I call the caption, the caption for the V subfield, volume. However, you would convert the spelled out word, O-N-E, to 1, because that is a number expressed as a word. That's not a transcribed area, that's a recorded area.
Okay.
I just want to clarify, if you're talking about in the A part of the series statement, the actual title.
Right, you
would
revert back to
transcribe it,
transcription.
however, 101 great literary masterpieces.
As
And
it
it's
appears.
O-N-E-H, you leave it as it is.
Okay.
Series titles are titles.
Very
They're
good.
transcribed elements, just like titles are transcribed elements.
Good point. Okay, now the part that's the hardest for me, let's get back to that publication date. If I have a date of publication in a numeric form, whether it's Roman numerals or Western Arabic numerals, I use that form as it appears.
Correct.
But if I have a number spelled out in, using words to represent a number in the publication date, then I must convert that to numerals.
Right. Exactly. That's right. Yeah.
Great.
I think one area of confusion is I kind of stay away from calling them numbers. They're all numbers, however it's expressed. The distinction is between numerals on one hand and spelled out words on the other hand.
Excellent.
So they're both numbers.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Anything else that I need to remember?
There are a couple more instructions on numbers which have to do with what we call inclusive numbers, the years of a date, for example, a publication over a range of dates. And the instruction there says to record full digits for both the beginning and the end of the span. So, for example, 1967-1972, not 1967-72. So record the full 4 digits for the closing and the opening years of the span. All right, and then the last thing I want to talk about is how to record ordinal numerals. And this is addressed in 1.8.4. And again, ordinal numerals, we're talking about things like 1ST, 2ND in English, things like that. But they could appear as FIRST, SECOND, etc. They're both ordinal numbers. The instruction is to record them as ordinal numerals, meaning the digit 1, and then you add the ordinal designation for the language. So in English, ST, ND for second, RD for third, etc. In German, you would indicate with a digit 1, period, because that would be what they do in German to say erste, things like that. There are plenty of instructions in RDA in the appendix for a lot of languages, not every language by all means, but there are instructions, guidance for other languages.
Great, Tim. Thank you so much. You've cleared up a lot of questions I had about capitalization, abbreviations, and numerals, so thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.